On 4 July 1943, just after 11 p.m., the aircraft carrying General Władysław Sikorski, the Prime Minister of the Polish Government-in-Exile and the Commander-in-Chief of the Polish Armed Forces, took off from the North Front Airport of the British Overseas Territory of Gibraltar. After several seconds of flight, the aircraft plummeted into the sea. No one on board survived the crash except the pilot. 70 years later, in this place with its magnificent view of the Bay of Gibraltar, a monument dedicated to the victims of that tragic event was unveiled. He always had the common allied aim before his eyes, which was the liberation of Europe from the yoke of the totalitarian Nazi regime. The ceremony was commenced with a letter from Bronisław Komorowski, the President of Poland, being read out. The President wrote that General Sikorski was an outstanding statesman and one of the foremost leaders of the anti-German coalition. His true genius as leader was insufficiently appreciated in the difficult times of war, added Stanisław Ciechanowski, the head of the Office for War Veterans and Victims of Oppression, who led the Polish delegation. For the Poles, the death of General Sikorski was a truly inordinate loss, especially in face of the challenges that stood before them as they fought from the very first day of the war for the rightful and legitimate Polish authorities to return to Poland, to regain their sovereignty, which had been trampled underfoot by our two totalitarian neighbors. The death of General Władysław Sikorski was a grievous blow to the Polish cause during World War II. For certain, he was the most respected of figures by the Allies, a Polish politician, soldier, combining those two posts. A man who personified the struggle for Polish independence. Indeed, he symbolized that independence. We are very happy to be able to participate in unveiling such a magnificent monument in such an attractive tourist spot. The one up to now was built near the site of the air crash. The current site is one that will attract far greater attention. More foreign tourists, Poles included, will now visit it.
Takie miejsce, które zapewni na pewno dużą frekwencję wielu turystów zagranicznych, w tym polskich, będzie ten pomnik odwiedzało.
This imposing monument in tribute to General Władysław Sikorski and his accompanying personnel was erected through the efforts of the Council for the Protection of Memory of Combat and Martyrdom. General Sikorski was the symbol of Polish opposition and the Polish struggle, said the secretary of the council, Professor Andrzej Krzysztof Kunert. Historians rightly treat General Sikorski as the creator and organizer of the Polish armed forces in exile. As is known, the first Polish army camp beyond the country's frontiers was set up as early as on 12 September 1939 in France. Sikorski, as the commander-in-chief, was for all those soldiers and for his countrymen in occupied Poland the symbol of hope and the symbol of faith in the restoration of freedom.
Mieszkańców okupowanej Polski, przecież okupowanej w całości Polski, był symbolem nadziei i symbolem wiary w to, że wolność jednak wróci.
Among those attending the official unveiling of the monument were Karolina Kaczorowska, the widow of Ryszard Kaczorowski, Poland's last president in exile, World War II veterans who flew in from Poland and Great Britain, clergymen, representatives of Poland's highest military authorities, and numerous Poles residing in Gibraltar. The cord to unveil the monument was pulled by Stanisław Ciechanowski, the head of the Office for War Veterans and Victims of Oppression, Professor Andrzej Krzysztof Kunert, secretary of the Council for the Protection of Memory of Combat and Martyrdom, the governor of Gibraltar, Vice Admiral Sir Adrian Jones, and Teresa Ciesielska, daughter of Colonel Andrzej Marecki, one of the victims of the Gibraltar air crash. After unveiling the monument, the Polish delegates and ex-servicemen laid flowers on the graves of several victims of the air crash, including that of Jan Gralewski, a courier of the Polish underground state, all of whom lie buried at the local cemetery. Before midnight, on the beach near the spot where the fatal disaster occurred, the final symbolic act of the commemoration of the 70th anniversary of General Sikorski's death was enacted. After prayers intoned by Józef Guzdek, the bishop of the Polish army, flowers were floated on the waters of the presumed place of death of the general and his accompanying personnel. The 70th anniversary ceremonies in commemoration of death of General Władysław Sikorski in the Gibraltar air crash were organized by the Office for War Veterans and Victims of Oppression, the Council for the Protection of Memory of Combat and Martyrdom, and the Polish Embassy in London.
Jestem przy Tobie, pamiętam. Jestem przy Tobie, pamiętam.